Fear. It's one of the most primal forces in the human experience. It whispers in the dark, warns us of danger, and keeps us alive. But what happens when fear takes control? When it no longer protects us, but consumes us? Madness. The loss of reason. The descent into paranoia, delusion, and chaos. For centuries, people have feared the idea of losing their minds. What if the monsters we fear the most aren't lurking in the shadows, but inside our own thoughts? Today, we explore the connection between fear and madness. How close are we to the edge? And once we cross that line, is there any way back? Fear is a survival mechanism, hardwired into the very core of our being. When our ancestors faced predators, fear was the signal that saved them. It told them to run, hide, or fight. It kept them alive. Our brains are designed to detect danger before we're even consciously aware of it. The amygdala, an almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep inside the brain, controls fear. It processes threats and triggers our body's response. The moment fear is activated, a chain reaction begins. The body floods with adrenaline. The heart races. Blood rushes to the muscles, preparing for fight or flight. But here's where things get complicated. Fear isn't always logical. It doesn't distinguish between real threats and imagined ones. A rustling in the bushes could be the wind or a predator. A shadow moving in the night could be nothing or something waiting to strike. And sometimes, fear persists long after the danger is gone. This is where fear turns into something more, something irrational. Something that doesn't just keep us alive, but starts to control our lives. Fear, when left unchecked, can spiral into something more sinister. It can become obsession, paranoia, or even psychosis. When fear is allowed to fester, the mind begins to break. Think of phobias, crippling fears of things that pose no real danger. Spiders. Heights. Enclosed spaces. But why does this happen? Why do some fears take root so deeply that they seem impossible to escape? The answer lies in conditioning. The brain learns from past experiences. A child who is bitten by a dog may grow into an adult who panics at the sight of one. A near drowning can make someone fear water for life. But sometimes, fear doesn't come from a direct experience. Sometimes, it's inherited from stories, culture, or even the collective fears of society itself. When people start seeing patterns that aren't there, fear distorts reality. The mind clings to illusions of control, searching for meaning in chaos. This is where fear transitions into madness. One of the quickest ways for fear to turn into madness is through isolation. The human mind was never meant to exist in total solitude. Studies on solitary confinement show disturbing effects. Prisoners locked away for months or years report hearing voices, seeing shadows move, and even feeling an invisible presence in the room. What the psychologists call it cabin fever, the descent into paranoia when people are cut off from the outside world. The brain, starved for stimulation, begins to fill the silence with its own horrors. The longer isolation lasts, the more the mind unravels. And yet, isolation isn't always forced upon us. Some choose it. Throughout history, some of the greatest minds, philosophers, artists, and visionaries have chosen solitude. But is there a cost? Can too much isolation push even the strongest minds to the brink? If fear and madness are so closely linked, what keeps us sane? What is it that allows some to step back from the edge while others fall in? The answer lies in control. Understanding fear, naming it, facing it, these are the keys to keeping it in check. Exposure therapy is one of the most effective treatments for phobias and trauma. By confronting fear in a safe and controlled way, the brain learns that the danger isn't ours. But what about the fears we can't confront? The fears that live in our minds, whispering doubts and paranoia. For these, mindfulness, meditation, and cognitive behavioral therapy offer answers. They teach the mind to recognize irrational fear for what it is, just thoughts, not reality. In the end, the difference between fear and madness comes down to this: who is in control? You, or your fear? Fear is not the enemy. It is part of us. It is what has kept our species alive for thousands of years. But left unchecked, it can destroy us. It can take our thoughts, twist them, and push us to the edge of reason. So how do we stop it? The answer is not to eliminate fear, but to understand it. To recognize when it's a warning and when it's a lie. To face it head on and refuse to let it rule us. In the end, fear is a choice. Will you let it control you? Or will you master it? If you found this video interesting, follow for more.